Hi, I'm Vignesh Sivakumar from Phoenix Financial Training, here to share a few final words of advice and tips relevant to the Advanced Performance Management exam that you will all be attempting in the next few days. The Advanced Performance Management exam has 3 questions, 1 question of 50 marks which includes 4 professional marks and 2 questions of 25 marks. The exam that you will be taking will be computer-based and will largely involve discursive elements with a few supporting calculations, probably in a ratio of 80 to 20. 80% being the proportion of discursive elements and 20% being the numerical content. APM is an exam where the application is more important than the underlying knowledge. There's very little underlying knowledge we need to go into the exam as long as we effectively apply the information in the scenario. There are, however, a few commonly tested question types or areas which largely revolve around the aspects of measuring performance and managing performance. So some of the question types that you get in the exam include you being asked to evaluate a report or given indicators or current KPIs of a company. So you would need to look at the report, talk about the relevance of the content, is it matching the goals, the objectives of the company, and also direct your attention towards the presentation and other aspects of the report. Further, on the key performance indicators, you would be asked to carry out a similar process where you will need to check are these KPIs relevant and matching the objectives and goals of the organization. Further, you may sometimes have to look at indicators in the context of a certain business environment or certain changes in the market or changes within the company where you could be asked to evaluate the indicators or suggest new ways of measuring performance. Besides this, there are other ways that other alternative methods of measuring and managing performance, which include non-financial models like the balance scorecard, the building block model, the performance pyramid. You may be again asked to evaluate KPIs using these models or alternatively suggest justified KPIs under some of the headings within these models. You will also need to be prepared to measure performance and comment on how well not-for-profit organizations are doing. This is typically done using the 3 E's technique or value for money. In addition, you need to be familiar with how using league tables is an effective tool for benchmarking or comparing performance, particularly in the not-for-profit sector. There are circumstances and situations when a company faces a lot of risk and uncertainty from the environment, and therefore in the exam you could be tested on whether you are capable of advising a company on managing the risk and uncertainty. So this may involve measuring risk using certain techniques like sensitivity, trying to address or manage risk using techniques like simulation or scenario planning, which are largely discursive elements, or alternatively making decisions using techniques like expected value, maxi-max, maxi-min, mini-max regret, which are all applied in the context of payoff tables. Budgeting is an integral part of an organization's performance measurement and management system, and therefore you could be asked for advice on whether the current budgetary systems are suitable, what changes would be needed, and so on. Alongside these questions, you could also be asked about the impact of implementing any change within the system on performance of the entity. For instance, information systems. You could be given a scenario where some new bit of technology is being implemented. It could be RFID, it could be big data, it could be implementation of ERPS. How is that going to affect the way we gather and measure information, as well as how we are able to manage the affairs of the company? Corporate failure is another important area. You need to be prepared to use quantitative and qualitative models to assess failure, and more importantly, you need to be able to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of these alternative models I've just mentioned. A modern costing technique that we have is activity-based costing, and this is a tool that helps companies optimize costs, manage costs much better, and manage their decision-making processes. And therefore, you need to be able to advise the company on how activity-based management helps the organization at a strategic level, at an operational level, and the risks and issues and problems that you generally tend to have with implementing and using activity-based management. There are a range of other lean management techniques such as Six Sigma, TQM, Kaizen costing, target costing, JIT, which are all methods that can be implemented in an organization to make it leaner and more efficient. You could be asked to talk about the impact of implementation of this on a particular company. Finally, and very importantly, another area that is frequently tested is value-based management, and connected with value-based management, the computation of economic value added. So you need to be able to talk about how a value-based management system can be implemented and how can you measure whether value is created through EVA as the primary measure of performance. So you need to be familiar with the commonly used adjustments in computing EVA. Now, what is it that you need to do to make your script stand out and be successful in your exam? Well, you need to be a star, which you are. So what do I mean by star? There are 4 things that you need to focus on to be successful in your exam. This exam, as I've mentioned, is less about knowledge and more about applying yourself well and doing your best within using the information given to you in the exam. So what are the 4 things you need to be good at? 1, S, structure. Make sure your answer is structured under relevant headings. So if there's a model given, try to organize your answer under the headings given under the model. Alternatively, if you're asked to talk about merits and demerits, well, organize your answer accordingly. The second aspect is T, time management. As with any ACCA exam, time management is critical for passing your exam. And given the nature of APM, we don't always score full marks on certain parts of questions. So therefore, it's important we spread our attention equally, evenly across the 100 marks and make a fair attempt on all the requirements. And that way, we've gained the easy marks on every question and done enough to pass the exam. The third aspect, application. As I've kept saying again and again, this exam is all about application. If you know an idea, if you know a concept, you've got to try and put that into the context of the story in the question. So the relevance of any system that you're talking about, or the KPI that you're talking about, has to be put in the context of the company in the question. The examiners do not appreciate huge paragraphs written in a general sense with no correlation or relevance to the scenario. And that takes me to the last part, making your answers relevant. And a large part of keeping your answers relevant is all about not drifting off and saying something the examiner does not want you to say. It's all about staying focused on what the examiner wants, and to a great extent, answer planning helps. Break up the requirements, try to lay out what the examiner wants, step by step, allocate your marks, and then have a go at the various parts of the same question. Please remember, in section A, your 50-mark question, the requirements are going to be embedded within the relevant paragraphs, and they will not be put down as standard exam requirements. So make sure that you read the paragraphs very closely to understand what exactly the examiner wants. So with this, I wish you all the very best for your upcoming Advanced Performance Management exam, and I hope it goes really, really well.